This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshito. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. What's up, y'all? Adam Hoots here, the Lean Builder, Hoots on the Ground podcast with, you guessed it, Read My Man's Shirt. Today, I'm super excited to introduce the world to Mr. Rob VanCott. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Tell us who you are, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. So thanks for having me on this morning. It's a beautiful day up here in upstate New York. My name's Rob VanCott. I'm a superintendent. I've been working in the construction industry since the late 1990s. I went to college at the University of Hartford. I worked with the electricians department part-time while I was going to school. I worked with the plumbing department, got out of college. I was going the environmental science route, and a lot of my friends were tradesmen, and I was always envious of skill sets that they were acquiring and the stories that they had at the end of the day. I think it was about 2003. I went to work for a general contractor in northern Connecticut, a guy named Mike Paulus with Newgate Builders, who built his own homes from foundation to finishes. He used to have a cigar in his mouth and chew on it all day. I worked on a crew of 3 guys where I learned a ton about rough carpentry, finish carpentry, roofing, and siding. It was an amazing experience. And from that point on, I knew that I just wanted to be a builder. I spent about 3 years working for a self-performed general contractor. And in 2005, I got an opportunity to go work for a structural engineering firm in Ridgefield, Connecticut. The DeSalvo Erickson Group was the name of the company at the time, and it was led by 4 principal structural engineers. It was the largest structural engineering company in Connecticut. Over the course of the next 5 years as a field engineer, I remember when I was leaving, I was looking at all the different reports I had done. I think I had made about 5,000 site visits by that point, looking at footings and masonry and structural steel, wood framing, everything from super high-end residential in the Gold Coast of Connecticut in Fairfield County up to upstate Connecticut and down in the city. Just worked with brilliant structural engineers, and those were great formative years for me. Learned about structure, learned about how to calculate loads, learned how to size things up and understand whether or not something was correct. And in a lot of ways, that formed the backbone for me in the construction industry. And he's always lived through the 2008, 9, 10 recession, and things were getting a little tricky for me in where I was. And I decided to move down to the city, and I worked on the 2nd Avenue subway project for the next 5 years. Was with Parsons Brinckerhoff at the time, which was the original subway design engineer for the New York City transit system. And that's where I learned about big work. Back in 2010 to 2014, worked with Parsons Brinckerhoff on the 96th Street subway station project. I was involved in all the utility relocation, the mass excavation, and the construction of the superstructure. Saw tunnel boring machines, really handled everything at that point, and worked with just brilliant people in the horizontal market, the civil sector, from companies like E. Cruz, companies like Chavone, Skanska, just real big work, huge multi-$100 million projects. And that was a real eye-opener just to get a feel for what big work looked like coming from a small pond. And around that time, Adam, I just knew that I had to get a piece of paper that maybe spoke to the construction side and wanting to be in that market. And so I went back to school and got my master's degree at night at NYU in the real estate and construction division. And right around that time, a kid that I went to kindergarten with, believe it or not, introduced me to a company called TG Nickel, which was an open shop high-rise builder in Manhattan. And that's right around the time when the open shop market really started to explode in New York City. And I spent the next 7 years in the city as a project engineer, as a project manager, as a superintendent, just a hybrid, doing anything and everything I could do to just learn about construction management and how to build in the city. Those were, like my dad always says, you pay for your education. And I paid for my education in a lot of different ways when I was down in the city. And this past summer was just wrapping it up on a project in the Bronx, which we were lucky enough, and I was lucky enough to get introduced to you. And I just decided I needed to make some life changes. And so now I'm in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley building for a company, Mid-Hudson Construction Management. And I'm having a blast doing all the same things I did in the city, but just upstate. And it's just life is good. So.
Amen, brother. I love that. I love hearing your story. And I didn't know it that deep. I forget that you have a master's degree. That's inspiring me at the moment as I'm pursuing mine. I think the world of that. I love you started in maintenance. You did a little engineering. Then you did some building as well from a smaller scale, and then you ramped it up. I've been fortunate enough to be on a job site with you, and dude, the way you handle people is second to none. I guess
Thank you.
the attention that you give people, like when people are in front of you, it feels like that person is the most important person in the world. And I'm just curious where you learned that skill or why that's so important to you. What is that all about?
That's a great question. And thanks for recognizing that. That's not always something that I pick up on, but I guess it just comes naturally. It has a story. There's a real human element to this day-to-day grind that we all get up and do each day. And I just think that that's one of the things that I love about construction. It's not necessarily all about the parts and the pieces, but it's about the people. And when you can form a bond with somebody and get a sense of where they're at that day, and sometimes just 5 minutes of just listening and hearing somebody out really makes the difference in what the result becomes. I've lived through projects that haven't always gone off so smoothly. And I think it just really boils down to communication, just the inability sometimes for people to listen. And I think that it's really important. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it's just something that is important if you're looking for the right results. It is important. You meet tradespeople every day. They're asked to perform work in conditions sometimes that are a little less than, they're not easy. Yeah, a little less than ideal. And I think when you're asking somebody to deliver and produce results under those types of conditions, it's really important to let them know that you care about the conditions that they're under and that they've got somewhere to lean on if they need to. And sometimes as a superintendent, you just got to roll up your sleeves and jump in there with them and be a leader. I think good leadership is a result of just good communication and listening skills.
I couldn't agree with you more. How do you keep that front and center though? Because there's so much going on. There's so many things you got to get done as a superintendent. How do you keep people front and center?
It's the priority, right? A building doesn't get erected on a screen, doesn't get erected as a result of emails or telephone calls. At the end of the day, construction is still a very straightforward black and white process. It's the process of people collaborating, communicating, and coordinating to put material in place. And so if you're not respectful of that process, you're not about the job. At the end of the day, you serve the job. The project is its own entity. And so as long as you respect that process and you understand that, that you have to communicate and you have to make sure that you are putting people first and foremost and listening to them, how else are you going to find out the level of detail that you need to find out? How are you going to find out that your corners of your walls aren't square or an embedment detail didn't work or
you can't at all. Yeah.
No, you can't find it all. And so thank you. And you just have to rely on your team. It's like a football team. It's like a baseball team. Everybody's playing to win. And if there's that sense of a team mentality on a project site, your chances of making a smoother ride and an outcome is ultimately what it's all about. So
I freaking love it, man. But so tell me this, because I tend to think being a superintendent is one of the hardest positions on a construction project. And you've lived kind of the life of all, I would say, 3 or 4 different roles in the industry. Why do you continue to gravitate superintendent?
So now up here, it's back to being a hybrid. This Saturday, I was working on financials. I'm at this point in my career, I'm putting submittal packages together as well, which is cool. Oftentimes you'll sometimes see things in comic strips about construction management where they take the least experienced individual and put them in charge of putting submittal packages together and coordinating that. And
Which is one of the most important tasks on the job. Holy cow. If you get the wrong materials there, you're screwed.
absolutely. And if nobody's looking at the contract documents and the submittals and coordinating and having discussions amongst trades to put the puzzle together, forget about it. It's just not going to be a pleasant experience.
Spoken
But
like a true New Yorker. Forget about it.
it's being a superintendent's a wonderful experience. Like, there's been moments in my career where 7 o'clock, the job site's humming and you hear hammers swinging and deck going in and lifts moving around and pipe being installed. And there's just an energy and a buzz that I really feed off of. I love being with the trades folks. I love like driving a job. I love the respect that you command by just listening and being involved. You're a quarterback. And I like that. Am I the best? No, learn every day. And so
You're
I
pretty
have
damn good, though. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've seen a lot of superintendents out there, Rob. You're a pretty solid superintendent, my friend.
Thank you, Adam. And it's really just about learning. So being a superintendent to me is about understanding every nook and cranny of the detail, asking why we're using the screw that we're using and the fastener type. In my career, when I worked for the structural engineering firm, investigating exterior facades where there was dissimilar metals, and so like the fasteners were not holding, and the millions of dollars worth of facade work that was put on was failing as a result of like the incorrect fastener being used. So it's that level of detail that I'm interested in, because it's a lot. When I worked for TG Nickel, they eventually were purchased, but they were acquired by a company called Consigli Construction, another great general contractor on the East Coast. I remember the CEO saying to me, "Rob, owners will forget schedule and cost overruns, but if a project is built poorly, they'll live with that forever." And he was speaking to quality. And so I think that's in my bones now, and that's why I love being a superintendent, because I like to think about the parts and the pieces and how it all comes together. Because if it's not put together correctly, you're going to have issues and you're going to return. And all that heartburn that's a result of maybe overlooking like small details and not understanding it can add up. As a superintendent, I'm drawn to that. I want to know about gaskets and how fittings work with plumbing and mechanical systems. I want to understand how HVAC systems work. These are just things that I really enjoy. So
I love it. Let's see. I want to know what makes you tick. Like we talked a lot about, again, I know you run hard, you do hard, but you also play hard. I'm curious, what makes Rob VanCott tick? What are you passionate about?
these days, New York Giants getting to the Super Bowl. No,
Congratulations, by the way, they won this weekend.
That's right. I have an 11-year-old son who he's a diehard Giants fan, and I just told him, just hang in there, kid. You'll see, we'll get there. And this has been a great season for us. I would say like that, what makes me tick? I think like early on, maybe it was a little bit of fear, like fear of failure. A good friend of mine, Pat Conlon, just a fantastic businessman and structural engineer. I remember him telling me one time, a little bit of fear is a good thing. Just the drive to not want to fail. I want to make my mark on the world in a way. And that's what's great about construction. Like I don't tend to say I built that anymore. Like maybe early on in my career, I said, I built that, or I built that. And now I say I was a part of that, which is the only way you can really put it. But I think early on in my career, maybe there was a little bit of fear of failure. But now I'm 45 now. I don't really fear much. I think what makes me tick now is just making sure that I'm a good dad for my son and my daughter, and a good husband to my wife. It really does make me want to succeed every day for them. I want to show them that there's nothing to fear. If you get up every day and you put your best foot forward and you give it everything that you got, that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day. You can't control everything that happens around you. As much as I want to control everything around me on a job site or in my life, it's just not possible. I think part of what makes me tick is wanting to control the outcome of the situation that I'm in or the project that I'm managing. I feel like I've been given a gift to be who I am and where I am. And we were talking earlier, I said, that's why you call it the present. I want to have an amazing life. I want to make an impact. I want to leave my mark on the world the best way I can. So I think that's what makes me tick.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I heard so recently my buddy Felipe He put something out there, said when you fail, that's just an acronym for the first attempt in learning. I've also heard some people talk about control being an illusion, that you'll never really have control over an outcome or a person. It's just the way you influence things and guide or steer them. Even from a schedule standpoint, you don't have control whether or not that drywall contractor is going to show up or whether or not you're going to find something in a renovation, but you have day-to-day movements that can steer and influence the outcome of those situations. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. That's huge. Tell me a little bit about your shirt because I can't stop staring at it.
Well, I wore it for you today. This shirt was given to me by Superstructure Safety Netting on the Bronx project. We were installing horizontal netting over an existing building that was required by code, Chapter 33, the New York City Building Code. And these are tradesmen that get up each day and literally are exposed to major fall hazards and exposure and perform their work without sweating it one bit. Their perspective and just approach to the job site and their tasks are pretty straightforward and black. And I think that's why the owner has this symbol on his shirt, no bullshito, because construction sometimes has so many layers as a result of it being a business, whether it's through insurance, whether it's through lawsuits and tradesmen's scopes of work and safety. And they had this shirt on. They had the shirt on one day, and I said, "Man, that's a great shirt. It really sums up everything that you guys do because you come in, you get your job done, and you get it done safely. And there's really not a lot of bullshito involved in the process. And because something had transpired one day where he had interjected and gotten involved in their scope because they felt that they needed to, and everybody has the right to be heard. But sometimes you have to understand that you have to have faith in people's ability to perform their work. And so these tradesmen were really just about getting in, getting their job done, and getting home. So they had this real no bullshito approach to it. All the paperwork and sort of layers of conversations that had to happen for them to get to from point A to point B, from starting at 7 o'clock in the morning and getting going at 8:45 in the morning and losing an hour and a half. These were things that they just, despised. And so they're making a push in the industry to just get rid of the bullshito, allow them to just get to work and do what they have to do each day. So it's a fun shirt to wear. A lot of people look at me and they say, "What is that?" And after a few minutes of staring at it, you get the hint. And I think that's back to what makes me tick is I don't really have time for bullshito. I want to get in. I want to get what we got to get going. I want to collaborate and talk about meaningful subject matter related to the job because we serve the job. And I just don't really have time for bullshito.
Amen, brother. That's I couldn't agree with you more. I'm gonna have to get me one of those shirts. You let me know where I can snag one. I am all about that life.
Awesome. It was really interesting, what you were mentioning before about, outcomes and influencing outcomes. And it's spot on. All you can do really is just communicate a game plan. You have to have a plan as a superintendent. I've had moments in my career where I've stumbled or I've said, you have to have that game plan. And that acronym for FAIL that's a brilliant acronym. I can't wait to use that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, amen, brother. So tell me this. So speaking of no bullshito, and we got to work a little bit together. I'm curious, and this is not a test, but I am curious. What does lean construction mean to Rob VanCott?
It's a great question. I'm a big preacher of 5S: sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. That's, to me, that kind of like sums it up and wraps it up. I know that it's a much larger topic, and I know that it has history in like manufacturing, and I think it's Kaizen.
Look at you. Yeah.
These are concepts and topics that I pick up on from people like yourself, Jason Schroeder. There's another gentleman on LinkedIn that posts a lot about lean, that he has really lays out a lot of content, and it comes back to that the core of 5S for me. When you're running high-rise work, or even upstate New York, when you're running work, it's so important to have order on a job site and a plan. So lean for me is really about making sure that you have a plan set in place, so that way when the trades folks start to arrive and material starts to arrive, everybody has a place for their material. Everybody has a sense of order, that the job site, there's a playbook. It's just like when you're in a football game, there's a playbook. And as long as we execute that playbook and have a plan, the outcome is influenced and it has a better opportunity to succeed. Lean for me is really a lot about that 5S concept. And I think it's something that you have to constantly manage. It's not like you set up your job site and you set up your plan and then it just happens. It has to constantly be touched upon, and you have to constantly talk about it and communicate with the people that you're working with. And it requires maintenance, but it's a lot different than not having any plan at all. You can have a plan and you not have a plan, but not having a plan is a plan for failure. I think 5S it really speaks to me. It is almost like everything that I read about lean, whether it's pull planning, whether it's quick huddles in the morning and talking about everybody's work packages for the day, setting milestones, like short-term milestones. Hey, by the end of the month, we're going to do this. And by the end of the following month, we're going to do this. And just getting people around a table or a job box and just talking about, like, hey, like this is the milestone we want to achieve as a team. Like, how far off are we? Can we make it? And I think if on some of these projects, when they're a little bit more complex, breaking milestones up on a month-to-month basis, it really gets you to the finish line. It gives everybody a sense and a purpose of why they're there from a day-to-day standpoint. Just having a playbook and having a plan and then communicating that plan. There was always something that you said to me about groupthink. If everybody understands the plan, they all know like where we're trying to get.
See as a group, know as a group, and act as a group. It's a lean
That's-
enterprise deal. Yep.
That is it. Otherwise, what are you doing there? Everybody's just slapping material together, which doesn't always come out the way you want it. So
Yeah, rarely does. But so I like the answer. And have you seen this book yet? This book is about 5S in relationships. It's called Lean in Love. A buddy of mine, Jesse Hernandez and Jen Lacey, wrote it. It is fantastic when you take the 5S concepts and you can actually apply them to relationships. I think you would get a kick out of that book. So I'm gonna have to get your
absolutely.
address. I will send you a copy of that.
I have seen Jesse's post and they're excellent. And I remember I joined like a web meeting one time that they were running, and I was like, what is going on here? What are they talking about? I don't think I was ready for it. I don't think I understood it. But the more I read his post and watch Jesse's post, the more I'm starting to understand what he's trying to communicate. So yeah, definitely, man. I'll put that on my reading list for sure.
Yes, I'm going to drop it to you. There's a show this Saturday. They do it every 2 weeks. And again, all they're doing is introducing the people side of construction to construction because it's been too often forgotten or ignored. It's a pretty awesome deal. I love hanging out with that group. There's always some real talk, no bullshito going on. In fact, their show, they call it No BS with Jen and Jess. So again, you'd fit right in. Good people, man. Would love to have you join that as well. Let's see. I'm curious. So you mentioned something that I used to say to you. What of all the stuff that we talked about do you still use? Do you still do? What lived with you from our time together?
I think when you and I were working together, we still are, when we had that opportunity in the Bronx, I think it was about not giving up, not quitting on communicating lean concepts. There were some forces on that project that didn't necessarily buy into what we were trying to achieve. And it baffled me. I didn't understand why it was mysterious to communicate a game plan. I think in the industry, there's sometimes a tendency to not want to, how should I say it, have big shoulders, not say, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to work towards this goal. And these are the commitments I'm going to make to you. And these are the expectations I have for, the relationship we've entered into contractually. I think when we worked together, I became a little less fearful about communicating a game plan. You're always going to have minor setbacks and failures, and it's how you handle it together as a team. And I think if you're transparent with your trade subcontractor partners about the process and you listen to them and to what their feedback and game plan is, you're in a better position to reach the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So I think in the industry, sometimes there's a tendency for people to not want to make decisions or put themselves out there for risk of failure and failing in front of your team. So I became a little more transparent, I think, after working with you, a little less afraid to communicate the plan. And now I'm doing the same thing that I was doing on big city jobs up here. I have my job board. I talk about our minor milestones. I issue my look aheads. And I think people appreciate it because the construction industry is made up of small businesses. It's people that have families and are doing the best to provide for their families, and there's money involved. And if you're on a project as a trade subcontractor and the general contractor or the construction manager doesn't have a plan, there's a big risk that you're going to lose money. And we're not in business because we get up each day and it's just what we like to do. When you're a kid, you get up each day and you go to school and you go to the soccer field or you go to the basketball courts or you go to the arcade and you have fun and you're living a life. And when you get to be an adult, there's repercussions for entering into arrangements. I think it's important to communicate a plan. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that you really helped me reinforce what I was trying to learn how to do, which was confident in the plan. And that plan was developed with my team. I think early on in my construction management career, I spent a lot of time behind a laptop developing look-ahead Excel spreadsheets that I would publish that nobody would look at. It was important for me to take that look-ahead out and just have a little bit more patience, walk up to a partner and say like, hey, I know you're busy, but can you take a look at these X's on this Excel spreadsheet? This is what I was hoping you could achieve for me over the 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. And they would take it sometimes and fold it and put it in their back pocket. I might not hear from them. And then I started to maybe have that second conversation with them. Hey, how's it going? See that game last night? How's your family doing? Everybody cool back at home? Yeah, everybody's good. Enjoy the holidays. That's great. Just like more, I think you taught me how to have a little bit more of a human approach on the job site, and paid huge dividends. I think if you have that human touch, and you get a lot more respect on the job site. So
Build a level of trust first. You build that
absolutely.
trust, and then people will do anything for you. I
Absolutely.
guess one of the things I remember from our time working, so two things. One, I remember your drawings. Holy moly. You used to put the most detailed drawings of sequencing, phasing. Like, this is the plan so people had to look at it. You used all these bright colors. I remember that. And then one day on the job site, I specifically remember there were a couple of guys, and I believe they were removing lagging on the job. And you're like, hey, why are you working over here? Like, why don't you go? Because all the lagging had to be removed. Is that what they were doing? They were taking the wood out of the lagging?
They were doing support excavation at the time. They would have been installing the lagging.
Okay, they were installing it.
So yeah, you drill piles, you dig, you install lagging, and then when you get to a certain elevation, you drill your tieback. It's
Yeah.
like, think of it like a rubber band
And
drilling.
we were what, 30, 40 feet down into the earth.
Yep.
And the sun was hitting the guys as they were working. And you're like, hey, look, that whole side of the other side of the site is all shaded. Why on earth are you guys working here? And I think it's like those little observations, and then not just observing it, but taking action on it. Like, those are the things that separate you from other superintendents, where it's like, hey, it only makes sense for y'all it's all got to be done anyway. Go work over there in the shade. And then in the morning time, when the sun is on this side, then come over here and work. Like, it just made sense. And from that moment on, it clicked for me like, wow, he really cares about the workers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. And being a superintendent, you notice these things. As you're walking through the job site, sometimes you tend to just look at what folks are working on, and you're always trying to build a better mousetrap. And I'm fortunate to have worked around some fantastic superintendents in my career so far, folks that are just sharp as a tack. And those drawings that you mentioned that I would do, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Oftentimes there's language barriers on our construction sites. If you're posting dates and milestones and there's color relationships between milestones and what's shown on a drawing, you see as a group, you act as a group. Those are ways to communicate the game plan, the playbook. But that's funny that you remember that story. I forgot about that. But yeah, it was brutally hot and then everybody was working in the sun, but we made the adjustment. And that was a really successful SOE project. We came in about 2 months ahead of schedule on that project by by being consistent with communicating the game plan. Foundation work, superstructure work, exterior facade work, envelope work is really linear. It's a very linear path. There's a start point and there's a finish point. And it oftentimes is a much less, I think, complex group of work to coordinate. And so it's after you've seen it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, you start to really pick up on the subtleties of the work and how to make slight adjustments to increase productivity, improve safety, and the environment that the trades folks are working in. I think once you get onto the interior side with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, sprinkler trades, and the interior rough out and finish trades, that's a group of work that becomes extremely complex, but there is a formula for it. There is a process for how the roughing starts and all that work takes place. That's an area of the industry that I'm putting myself in front of more and more because it's a group of work that it intrigues me. Mechanical systems, HVAC systems. If you start to understand HVAC systems, it's probably because you're getting a better understanding of fire alarm systems. There's such a connection between the two. If you're understanding sprinkler systems, well, then you probably have experience with fire alarm systems because it's all tied together. Interior finishes, understanding where outlets are placed, how to install metal door bucks and get them set up right so that way when you install your door, you're not having issues with door operability. Just understanding how to get rooms ready for interior fit outs, and then in waste management. These are scopes of work where tremendous amounts of material are being installed and a lot of waste is being generated. And if you don't have a program in place for how to deal with that waste, how do you see the forest through the trees? Your end goal is to get a finished product completed so that you can get to the punch list phase so that you can hand that product over to a client. So there's all these different formulas that exist for the different types of trade work packages that get implemented. And that's going off on a tangent, but that's another thing that makes me tick, is understanding a formula. And a lot of times the work that you get involved in as a superintendent, you either see consistently or you don't see consistently often. So what do I mean by that? Some people only get to see a foundation once, twice, 3 times in their career. Others, all they do is foundation work or interior finish programs. There's superintendents that do nothing but interior finish fit outs day in and day out. What draws me to the industry is wanting to get a command of all of these trades and the elements of the work, because it's just fascinating. It's fascinating understanding how the materials go together and what they look like at the end of the day, and making an architect or an interior architect's vision come alive and pop. The job prior to us meeting in the Bronx, there was a job in Manhattan that we worked on. The architect was Perkins and Will, and the lobby was a 3-story lobby, and it had wood slat ceilings, and they were all at different angles as it came to the storefront system. It was its own project in and of itself. And I remember each week we met and we ground out the lobby. Each one of the team members got together and we laid out the ceiling on the floor. And then we said, okay, now we understand where this is going. Are we good? And we shot up our lasers and we looked for conflicts along the exterior perimeters. And then we said, we want to get the MEPs going, and we have models that tell us that there won't be clashes, but there's a couple of elements of work where we're just unsure of how it's going to come together. And I remember one night staying late with my partner, Juan, who was my carpenter. And what we did is we went up in a scissor lift and we drilled pencil rods, and we drilled the pencil rods to the elevations that we needed them to represent where the ceiling ended. And then we did string lines to represent the perimeters of these ceiling layouts. And that little exercise allowed the MEP trades, some of which were using the model, some of which were not using the model, to really visualize and understand where the ceiling heights were. Instead of having busts and then turning around to a trade subcontractor and saying, that's your problem, you didn't follow the coordination drawings, we cut that out and we eliminated that by just simply replicating what was about to happen with strings. You got to be into this stuff. You got to love to build. You got to want to be out there, and you got to want to avoid conflicts and issues, because it's hard enough to get to the job site sometimes through traffic or whatever else that you're dealing with in life. When you get there, I really want to promote a job site that's fun, that's safe, productive, and that everybody gains a real sense of pride about when they leave each day.
Yeah, you just nailed how you operate on a job site specifically. Absolutely. And I feel like you'll have no problem incorporating all the scopes with just the scopes they rely on one another so much, whether it's electrical and fire alarm or fire sprinkler, or like you said, fire alarm and HVAC, or HVAC units produce condensate. Now we got to get the plumber to get it. Like, all of them support one another, and they develop this system. And when you are able to know the entire system, you're able to produce more quality work. I love where your mind's at. You mentioned some pretty awesome superintendents that kind of helps raise you or groom you or make you who you are. Let's shout them out if you can. Who are those people?
Absolutely. First and foremost, Mike Paulus, a general contractor at East Granby, Connecticut, incredible builder, not a checkbook builder, as he would say when he chewed on a cigar, just incredible guy. After that, I'd say shout out to Rich France with railroad construction, at Gus Lijo with China Construction, incredible leaders on Second Avenue. Just saw how these guys operated in just some major adversity in the city, just getting attacked from all sides. And somehow they managed to put a subway system, right, and a subway station on 96th Street. Just huge shout. Brilliant engineers working with down there. Phil Piero, just an amazing guy. He worked for E. Cruz at the time. Pablo Limes, a project engineer with China Construction. That's all horizontal market stuff. Moving into the vertical infrastructure market, a shout out goes to Jimmy Thorpe. Jimmy Thorpe is with a company down in North Carolina now. He was with Gilbane, but Jimmy was my first general superintendent down in the city. Just huge shout out to Jimmy Thorpe. Other guys, Keith Balvin, Consigli Construction, Ed Olaf, Consigli Construction, just awesome leaders. And now I'd say I'm working for a company up here. A big shout out to a guy named Bob Capoletti. We call him Capo. Bob's been around in the industry for a while. He's got the Midas touch. Just incredible people. It's a wonderful industry to work in. And of course, you, Adam, learned so much from you, and just really appreciative of our relationship and the time you've invested in me. And so I thank you as well. So,
Man, I love it. I can just feel your energy pick up too when you start shouting out people. Man, you love giving love to people. Again, it's about the people and just raising the awareness and giving love to where it's due, man. I love how you celebrate people. That's awesome. So we're coming down to the end here. I got a couple more questions for you, but here's what I want to know. What is a word or phrase that drives you nuts?
what's a word or phrase that what?
Drives you crazy?
Oh,
I
God.
love the backup alarms too, by the way. That makes this like 100% real.
Word or phrase. So let me spin that a little bit. First, I could think of words or phrases that I got an answer. But let me first start with the ones that I love. So no pressure, no diamond, right? In life, you're going to have pressure. You're going to have to pay for your education, especially down in that city. But if there's no pressure, you don't get a diamond. I owe that one. Yeah, that one, I owe that to my pops. Another one, no smooth sea made a skilled sailor. That's probably been out there for a while. You got to work and push through adversity in this industry to learn your chops. I'd say one expression that drives me crazy is when you're on a project and you've got a superintendent or a PM that says, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I told the guys to do this and I built that. That drives me bonkers because nobody ever makes any of this happen on their own. There is no I in team. I would say that's probably my biggest pet peeve is that just the word I, especially in this industry.
Interesting. I love that. I love that. I think that's huge. What culture is my word, man. I can't stand the word culture. It's because it's an outcome. It's that thing that's in the end. To me, it is about all the little things that we do to establish the culture. And when you're focused on the culture, you miss a lot of those little things. Is there a job site story that kind of resonates with you or something that's from your jobs back in the past, like funny, learning,
Yeah. Oh,
failures? What do you got?
God, there's tons. I would say I remember, so I'll tell you a safety story one time. I was up on a 34-story building and we were trying to figure out how we were going to build up the top of house. We still had an internal climber crane that was sticking out the top of the building. But as soon as that internal was gone and the derrick came off the building, we had to finish the job. And so we were all up there, and our plumber, who at this point in the program was doing a lot of interior roughing work, came out without his hard hat. And I said to him, Adam, man, come on, everybody's up here. We're wearing RPE. Do your part. Let's get a hard hat. And I radioed the hoist, and I had the hoist guys bring up a hard hat. And I gave the hard hat to Adam. And we were all sitting there talking about spitballing how we were going to get the next phase of the work done. And all of a sudden, very strong wind came through. And the hard hat just picked up off of Adam's head and went right over the side of the building, a 34-story building. So within seconds, all of a sudden, I heard the deep voice of my foreman say, Rob, come in. I said, uh-oh. And a hard hat actually clipped the side of a lady's shoulder down on the street.
That's not funny.
No, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but 34 stories, 350 feet up, when that comes down onto somebody, people could die. It turns out everything was okay, and the lady said, thank God nothing worse happened, and she went on her way. But there's another expression that a guy named Joe Chiarelli taught me once, is that no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
I think in this industry, you got to really be careful about the good deeds that you purposefully go out of your way to do. Sometimes they can backfire you from time to time. There's a real human element to this. You got to make sure you take care of your trades folks, and you got to be a good communicator. You got to be a good quarterback, but you also got to curb your enthusiasm sometimes on how much of a gift maker you try to be.
Amen. Well, you made the right call for that. He just needed to size it better, it sounds like. Let's see. Do you have anything else you want to get out to the world?
Yeah, actually I do. I'm on site right now. I'm trying to finish up a project, and I got a gentleman I'd love to introduce you. This is David Oliveira. He goes by Bronco.
Hey, nice to meet you.
What's up, Bronco? How are you, sir?
Good, yourself?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm even better now.
Oh, cool.
Bronco is the real deal carpenter, better carpenter than I've ever was.
Right.
This young man's got an incredible story. There was one day I was sitting in my job trailer, and Bronco came in, and we started to communicate, and we started to talk. And then I just picked up on the fact that this is a young man that's got so much potential. He just blows me away. His ability to turn nothing into something is incredible. Him and his team came out here over the Thanksgiving break and installed 5,000 square feet of roof trusses and 7,000 square feet of sheathing in 6 days. And
Dang it, boy.
Yeah, rapido.
Rapido, yes.
So
Bronco was kicking that day, huh?
This guy's a really special guy.
Thank you. They're Rob is guy, a nice guy, man. He's the best.
Bronco, how long have you been?
I went to a lot of jobs and didn't find like him. He look after you, not like the other guys. He wanna just wanna get the job done. He look yourself. This is, man, it's amazing.
Yeah, I got a lot of love for Mr. Rob. He knows how to treat people. How long have you been a carpenter, Bronco?
Man, for a long time. So I come from Brazil, and I work in Brazil, carpenter for like 5 years. And I moved to Australia, and I get another experience there in construction as well. And I come here for 3 years. Yeah, here new experience as well. I learn every day. I keep learning. Like I learn with Hobby, he learn with me. This is nice, man.
Amen.
He's teaching me Portuguese.
Hey, yeah, we're forever learning. Absolutely. I didn't realize you were a worldwide carpenter, Bronco. Holy moly, you're like a mogul in this stuff.
Yeah, no, just to bring closure. It's all about the tradesman. Bronco is lightning fast, super high quality, smart guy. And that's what I love about being in this industry, is that you get the opportunity and the pleasure to work with gentlemen like himself. So
that's what lean builders do, man. I love it. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you so much. Bronco, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, man.
Likewise. So excited to celebrate you today. And man, you be safe out there. Yeah. You are what makes this world go round. Society depends on you. So thank you for your service to an industry that usually doesn't say thank you very much.
No worries. My pleasure, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Adam. Good seeing you, man. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Talk soon, Rob.
Bye-bye.